I had recently moved to a new city for work and was on a tight budget, so I turned to Craigslist to find an affordable apartment. I found a small studio that seemed perfect, the rent was surprisingly low for the area, and the pictures looked decent enough. The landlord assured me it was a great deal, and I couldn't pass it up. At first, everything seemed fine. But soon after moving in, strange things started happening. Late at night, I would hear eerie footsteps echoing through the apartment. Sometimes, the lights would flicker for no reason, and the air would turn icy cold. I tried to dismiss it as my imagination, but the feeling of being watched was impossible to ignore. One night, as I was preparing dinner, the kitchen cabinets flung open violently, and all the dishes came crashing down. I was terrified and convinced that I was now alone in that tiny space. The final straw came when I woke up one night to find a shadowy figure standing at the foot of my bed, staring at me with hollow eyes. Fearing for my safety, I immediately contacted the landlord to break the lease. But when I brought up the strange occurrences, he seemed unsurprised, as if he had heard it all before. He reluctantly agreed to let me go, but as I hurriedly packed my bags, I felt a presence behind me, breathing down my neck. That chilling sensation stayed with me long after I left that haunted studio. When my roommate suddenly moved out, I was left with a hefty rent that I couldn't afford on my own. Desperate to find a replacement, I posted an ad on Craigslist for a sublet. Before long, a seemingly friendly guy named Mark responded. He was polite and charming in our initial conversations, and I thought I'd found the perfect subtenant. Mark moved in, and for a while, everything was fine. But as the days passed, his behavior became increasingly peculiar. He would stay up all night, pacing around the apartment and whispering to himself. I noticed strange symbols drawn on the walls and the floor of his room. When I asked him about it, he claimed it was for meditation purposes, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong. One night, I woke up to loud chanting coming from Mark's room. Terrified, I peeked inside and saw him surrounded by candles, his eyes rolled back, and he seemed to be in a trance. The room felt heavy with malevolence, and I knew I had to get out of there. I decided to do some research about the symbols he had drawn, and to my horror, I discovered they were associated with dark rituals and summoning spirits. It dawned on me that Mark might be involved in something sinister. With the help of a friend, I confronted Mark and asked him to leave. He didn't put up much of a fight and left without much resistance. As he walked out the door, he turned to me with an unsettling grin and whispered, "You can't escape what's coming." The air around us felt charged with an evil energy, and I shuddered at his words. I changed the locks and cleansed the apartment of any lingering negative energy, but the memory of that sinister sublet still sends chills down my spine. When I stumbled upon a listing for an apartment in a historic building, I couldn't believe my luck. The place was stunning, with high ceilings, beautiful moldings, and large windows that flooded the rooms with natural light. The rent was surprisingly low, but there was a catch: the building had once been an asylum, and the apartment I was interested in had been used to house mentally ill patients. Ignoring the creepy history, I decided to give it a chance. From the moment I moved in, things felt off. The air was heavy with a sense of despair, and I often heard distant, tortured screams. I tried to reassure myself that it was just my imagination running wild. But one night, as I was getting ready for bed, I saw a flickering light in the hallway. I walked towards it and noticed that the door to the apartment opposite mine was ajar. Against my better judgment, I pushed it open and was met with a chilling sight. The room was still furnished as a patient's cell, complete with restraints on the bed. Terrified, I ran back to my apartment and decided to investigate the building's history. I discovered that the asylum had a dark past, with reports of mistreatment and patient deaths. It was rumored that some of the souls never left the place and that their tormented spirits still wandered the halls. Unable to bear the eerie atmosphere any longer, I tried to break my lease, but the landlord refused, claiming he had disclosed the building's history, and it was my responsibility to research before signing the lease. Trapped in that haunted apartment, I started experiencing horrifying nightmares, and I would wake up with unexplained bruises on my body. I sought the help of paranormal experts, but even they were too frightened to set foot in my apartment. The only advice they offered was to try and communicate with the spirits and ask them to leave peacefully. Desperate, I attempted a seance, but it only seemed to make things worse. I eventually gave up and moved out, leaving behind the haunting memories of the abandoned asylum apartment. After a bad breakup, I needed to find a new place to live quickly. I found an ad for a room in a shared apartment at Craigslist, and the current occupants, a friendly couple named Lisa and Matt, seemed nice enough during our initial meeting. At first, everything was great. We got along well, and I felt like I had found a supportive environment to heal from my past relationship. But as the days went by, I noticed a change in Lisa and Matt's behavior. They became possessive, asking me where I had been and who I had been talking to. One evening, I returned home late from work to find Lisa sitting in my room, going through my personal belongings. When I confronted her, she claimed she was just looking for something, but her eyes were filled with suspicion. I felt violated and knew I couldn't stay in such an uncomfortable situation. Things took a turn for the worse when I started hearing strange noises at night, whispering voices, and the sound of someone moving around in the apartment when Lisa and Matt were supposedly asleep. I began locking my bedroom door, but one night, I woke up to find it wide open, and a shadowy figure standing by my bed. Feeling unsafe and trapped, I reached out to the landlord to express my concerns and ask for help. To my surprise, he defended Lisa and Matt, dismissing my fears as mere paranoia. He told me I was bound by the lease and had no choice but to stay. I knew I had to escape that toxic environment, but I couldn't afford to break the lease and find a new place. So, I started looking for roommates to replace myself in the apartment, but whenever I found someone interested, Lisa and Matt would scare them away, making up lies about me to deter potential tenants. It was a nightmare, feeling trapped with no way out. Eventually, I managed to find a distant relative who agreed to let me stay with them until I could sort things out legally. Leaving the creepy roommate situation behind was a relief, but the experience left me shaken and wary of shared living arrangements for a long time.